bit about the Banerji Protocols, using our materia medica and repertory, and taking cases, because this is so important. And when I say taking a case, I don't mean that it necessarily needs to be super formal, but I want to give you some tips on how to do this and how to effectively look up what you need to treat that issue. So I want to give you some examples. So when it could be just, a mom with a child, it could be a friend, whatever it might be. But when you start asking someone about what their issue is going on, you're going to want to, if you can at all possible, write down and take notes. I will include an example for you, but a lot of times you're honestly out talking to friends and somebody's having an issue, or your child is crying, and you don't have time to write all that down at that moment, right? So what you're going to do to take the case, especially if it's someone that you know really well, it gets a little bit easier. So you're going to ask them, okay, what's going on? Can you tell me? Can you stop crying? Can you tell me what's wrong? If it's something where obviously they've had shock or trauma, you want to treat that, of course, probably with arnica and aconite. But if you're trying to figure out something else a little bit deeper, you're going to want to start asking some questions. We try not to give too many leading questions because that can send them down the wrong road. You want to give very open-ended questions. For example, how does that pain feel? Is it stitching? Is it throbbing? Is it dull? That's going to really help narrow it down, because a lot of homeopathy is narrowing it down within the nuances of what the remedy or the protocol is looking at. You may want to ask, what makes this better or worse? Are you better in heat or warmth, outside, inside? Do you want to, if you're feeling nauseous, are you needing air? Are you needing water? Are you needing a lot of water, or you don't want anything at all? So asking some of those questions and saying, how do you feel? How does this make you? Does this increase it or make it worse? The other thing is especially if we're working with some chronic issues, I really recommend that you have them, you can write it down or they can write it down, but have them write down in order of what the issue is, what's the most important. Because sometimes I'll start talking to someone and they'll want me to take their case, and they'll list like 20 things, not 20, but they'll give you this long list, and you're like, okay, can you tell me what the most important, the top one or two are, maybe three right now? And sometimes what I would consider to be the most annoying is not what they consider. So you want to hear from them. It's so important. The thing I love about homeopathy is we're not just going and putting the stuff in the computer and something spits out. We are tailoring this to every person that has a need, and we can tweak it and change it as we need it. It's not just one standard for all, right? So I would ask them, on a scale to 1 to 10, where is this issue? And if they say, oh, it's an 8, and you want to get how frequent is this issue? You want to ask them, again, what makes it worse or better? Have you noticed dietary changes that helps or doesn't help with this? So depending on the issue, of course. If there's any way to measure or take a picture of something, for example, if you got a burn, why don't you take a picture of it and watch how quickly it heals with using homeopathy? Or if you have a skin condition, let's follow it. Is it going to get worse? If you give a remedy and all of a sudden it gets worse, then okay, that's probably not the right remedy. And you can go back to the picture, because a lot of times you can still be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's actually improving. If you look back, you're like, oh, okay, I guess there is less of that rash, right? And you're like, why is the rash still here? But you want to see consistent, somewhat improvement as you're giving the remedies. Every once in a while, you could have a new issue come up. And if that happens, it could be an aggravation. So you want to be careful that like I said, we're respecting this medicine, but at the same time, you can't overdose or hurt yourself. But you want to see, like, if something new cropped up, it could be like if you're having a cold and then you start coughing, it could be the normal process of that as your body's clearing it and going through it. Or if it's something completely strange and different, I would recommend you look in the materia medica. Of course, you have read up on every remedy that you're giving, right? If you can, unless it's a quick thing. And you're looking for if other issues are coming up from that could cause that. Okay. So again, like I said, you want to get a scale of 1 to 10. And then when you meet with them again or talk to them again, you can say, we talked about this issue, and you give them the date, and this is what you said about it. Try to write down their exact words if you have time. And so, oh my goodness, my head hurts, and whatever it might be. And anytime I'm around light, it's so painful. I've got to cover my eyes and not move. That's going to be really good information. Write that down. When you give them a remedy or two, and they say, oh my goodness, it's not changed at all. But you see, before they were laying on the couch and holding their head and trying not to move, and they're a kid, and they're all of a sudden walking around, getting into stuff, doing something to their sibling. You're like, I think there's some improvement here. The other piece I wanted to tell you is that a lot of times we're going to heal from the inside out, and that also from the top to the bottom. So a lot of times also I notice is sometimes their mental condition, which sometimes we don't always notice when you see, you've got somebody with one kind of pain, will improve. So even their outlook in life, like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get rid of this issue. Oh, it's just so awful. And then you see them, an hour or two, you've given them a remedy, and you ask them, or you just observe them using your observation skills. You're like, they seem to be at least in a little better mood. I see a smile. They're still not feeling great. They're still blowing their nose. But I'm seeing some improvement. And that's what we're looking for. We're seeing regular improvement. Okay, so with the Banerji Protocols, we typically have the person, if they're over a year, take Camphora 200, one dose, one day, if we are going to be treating a chronic. You don't have to do this, but it can help clear the slate, especially if somebody has been on a lot of medication. Camphora is just good for clearing that. You could even use it if somebody is having a reaction to a medication. Like I had a friend that she woke up and she had a very terrible surgery, and she woke up and she was on fentanyl, and she does not remember ever saying that they could put her on that. And she decided that she did not want to be on it, and she went cold turkey, which there was a whole bunch of side effects. She was really, really rough situation. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But anyway, so when she was very depressed, and I don't even think I can live, because she was in so much pain from the withdrawals, I brought her Camphora, and then she had to wait a day or two to get to her doctor that was in another city. So anyway, so that one can really help. But Camphora 200, just one dose one day, can help just clear and reset your system so that you're ready to receive this. And then the next day you would start on that chronic either protocol, or if you found a remedy that's going to work in that situation. So I'm going to give you an example. So a lot of people deal with acid reflux. In the Banerji book, a lot of this was written by medical doctors, so it can be a little challenging to find the right terminology that they're using in here. So this one is under GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease. So I would have never thought, okay, acid reflux might be under here, but so it takes a little bit of reading to learn. And then they have their first line medicine, which is Iris Versicolor 200, and it says specifically in liquid, 2 doses daily. If you can, try to order the liquid. If you can't, let's say, it's going to take a week or two for that to come in, go ahead and give them the pellets if you have the pellets. What happens if, like, you had a 30 in Iris Versicolor, but you didn't have the 200? Go ahead and use what you have. It's more important to use the right remedy, because that is often, it will work even if it's not the right potency, than it is to, let's wait till we get that in. If you're suffering, I would just go ahead and give what you have on hand. The other thing is, as you develop friendships and you have other people that do homeopathy, you can contact them and say, hey, does anyone have this one? It's fun to be part of groups, Facebook groups, or any other kind of groups where you can kind of help each other. The second one that's listed, both of these are under the first line, so there's 2 options, is Lycopodium 30 in liquid, 2 doses daily. This is what they found in the Banerji clinic worked best for these GERD issues. And then you would try that and see. You would wait, like I said, at least if you can, a month, which seems like a long time when you're dealing with something like acid reflux and you're in a lot of pain. But you want to assess and see if you're improving. If not, you would go to the second line remedy medicines and try those. Let's say, for example, I'm going to give you an example from my family. We had somebody with warts, and we tried the first line remedies, we tried the second line remedies, and I think we didn't have the third line one. So anyway, I decided to go to my materia medica and go to the back and repertorize it. So we went to warts, and there are so many different options for warts, right? There's all different types because skin changes. And this is something, like I said, we tried those for several months. No, actually, in fact, we were getting more of them. So I knew we were on the wrong track. So then I went to, like I said, warts right here in my materia medica. And as I was taking the case, I was writing down, okay, they have different questions like, is it raised or not raised? Is it, is it, or is it cancerous? No, it wasn't cancerous. Is it bleeding? Wasn't bleeding. Was it flat? Yes, it was flat. So I was able to look in here and write down the remedies that were closest. So for example, let's say I went to the flat one. You can look at the main one under warts, which has a long list. And we're going to be looking at the ones in this repertory that are usually capitalized and bold. And the reason why is that is most commonly helpful for this. So if you can see the list right here of all of the wart remedies, you're like, oh wow, that's a little overwhelming. But you look at, okay, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this page that are bold and capitalized. So you're going to want to write those down. And then what you're going to want to do is go through. If you can narrow it down anymore, like I said, flat kind of helped us. And under flat, there was only one that was capitalized and in bold. You can also try doing this online. Look online and see if they can give you a list of, okay, if it's, this kind of issue, look under here. So then you're going to go to your materia medica and you're going to read up. For example, for this one, it's DULC, which is Dulcamara, I believe. So you would look under Dulcamara and you would read up on it. And this is a little bit longer. You can get a smaller materia medica if you just need a quick reference. And you would read about that issue and about that remedy and what it should impact. So it's probably going to list a whole slew of areas that it impacts. But we know we're looking at skin. So instead of, I would skip the mental, I would skip the, all the different areas and head to, like, they have female, they have face, head, heart, kidneys, male, female, mouth, whatever it might be. I'm going to skip to skin because I'm looking for skin and I'm trying to figure this out. So I would read up, I'd read the main heading, what is it from, how has it been how has it treated other issues, and then I would move to skin and see. And then I would write down, okay, this is one for skin. This looks like it might help. And we're looking for a 3-legged stool. We're looking at least 3 different other items that are mentioned in there that would relate to that person. Like it could be they prefer to, or they're always hot and they're kicking off their covers. That's usually a sulfur type person. Or they're always angry and in a hurry and impatient. That's usually an ex-vomica kind of person. So you're looking for at least 3 things if you can for that 3-legged stool to see if that is going to help that person, okay? And so, for example, like if I was looking at, let's say, 3 remedies, I would write them down. Let's say Bellis, Causticum, and that Dulcamara. I would write those down, and then I would write and put down if I had different issues that came up under there. In addition to it, let's say, this might say, in addition to skin issues, they may have tummy issues on a regular basis, or they may overeat. So you're going to write those things down, and then you're going to look and see out of those 3 remedies, which one seems to be the most apparent. And again, I love to pull in the person who I'm trying to treat, if I can. If it's a child, I kind of like, okay, here are our options, and if it's something they can easily read, I'm not going to usually hand them this. But if I've got something where there's just some easy lists and all that, I say, okay, look through these. and I know in my head what I think it is, but I want them to decide and say, oh yeah, this one, or they may pick a different one. I want them to have ownership. When they have ownership, they're more likely to not only use it if they need to use it on a regular basis, but they're also more in tune to their bodies. And my big thing is I want to educate them, right? I want to educate them because someday I'm not going to be with that person. Hopefully they will grow up, or they'll, be able to as a friend or whatever. And I want them to learn you can do this. Even though it looks a little bit large and looming, you can do this. You can figure this out. So I just want to encourage you to go through and learn how to do this. It's so important to use your materia medica in your repertory. And again, I'm going to give you at least a materia medica online that is free if you need to go through it, so you can at least read it. It's going to have language that is a little bit more medical ease, and some of this was written like over 100 years ago, which is why I recommend trying to get a newer book if you can, but they're free, so they're a great resource. And there's sometimes when, even with this book that's how many pages? It's over 2,000 pages. Sometimes there's remedies that are not listed in here that I have to look up somewhere else. So that's another reason why it's good to have some good resources, not just one. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you. So again, with taking your case, you are going to continue to keep careful notes. And I really recommend even having a file per family member, or something on your computer, or notes in your phone. We almost always have our phones with us, right? So that you can go back and say, oh wow, okay, last time when you had let's say acid reflux, or if you had let's say that skin issue, this worked. So let's go back to that, because I will tell you, so many times you will forget, especially when you're helping so many people. You're like, oh, did I use this one or did I use this one? So write down if you can. I used this on my dog, and my dog, when it ate too much, or it ate something it shouldn't have, I used arsenicum. So you can go back and say, oh, I used arsenicum and that one seemed to work really well. So at least you have a starting place, because a lot of times some people will respond well to certain remedies. So that's why it's really good to have those notes. Now I will say, for example, colds or coughs, those can be a little tricky because they seem to be a little bit different every time they come in. And if you have a whole family of people, you think, okay, well, we've all had the same cold, it'll be easy. I'm just going to use Eupatorium, work for me, so I'm sure Eupatorium will work for them. A lot of times that's not the case. So it does take a little bit of trial and error, and say, oh, Eupatorium's not working for them, I need to find another remedy. I'm going to give you an example. There's a family here in town, and she took my classes. They have 10 kids, and they had chickenpox run through their whole family, and it was over several weeks. And she said various remedies that worked for some kids did not work for others. And they actually had the chicken pox in various areas in various ways. Some were just a little bitty eruption and they were gone in a day or two. Some kids it was a couple weeks, and some were in pain or whatever during that time. So she had to learn to treat them all in where they were. And so that's why I don't want you to expect, okay, I know what to give for COVID, or whatever it might be. Although I will say that sometimes we will see trends. For example, when it first came around, when the virus first came around, a lot of people were using Eupatorium in a mother tincture, and that worked really well. There was a different time, a couple years later, when it came around, and that wasn't working, and so some people were using it in a 200. Others were using Bryonia. Others were using Bryonia aconite belladonna. So it's always helpful to kind of keep your head to the ground and listen to see what's going on in your area. A lot of times I'll just see, oh my goodness, all these people are dealing with intestinal issues. And so I know, one, to watch out for it, and two, like what's working for other people, right? So that I can be prepared in case it comes through here, or if I have usually people contacting me, how do I help this issue? My kids are all sick with this. And we're like, oh yeah, that's been going around. This is what's worked for some people. We can try that if those symptoms match. So I hope that helps. And again, you want to keep careful notes, look back in your records, and you will be surprised at one, just how much you've learned, how much you've grown, and how it becomes easier with time. Like, oh my goodness, all these scientific words, I couldn't remember them, but now that I've used these three remedies, and I've taught my kids how to pronounce them, I've taught myself how to pronounce them and say them, I'm saying them like nothing. It's almost like you're learning a different language, because you are in some ways, but it's a different way of thinking. So we're, like I said, we're treating the person for what they need and at that situation, and we can always change it, which is just gorgeous. I just love it because nobody's a cookie cutter, right? And everybody can be impacted by this. So for your homework, what I want you to do is I want you to take a case, and I prefer you not do it for yourself. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but take a case of, it could be a pet, it could be a family member, and we could do a fictitious case for you here. Actually, I'll do a fictitious case, but I recommend not doing it for yourself because sometimes treating yourself can be the hardest. I will say, as a mom, a lot of times I'm just so going, taking care of so many other people, and like I know that I'm getting sick or I'm hurting or something's going on. I'm like, I need to get to that remedy, or I need to order that remedy, and I just keep putting it off. And then I finally take that remedy. I'm like, oh man, I don't think it helped as much as I needed. And sometimes we just don't have the, I don't want to say energy, but the energy or time to really figure it out for ourselves. So it's always great to have a buddy or friend that understands homeopathy that can help you. So I'm going to give you one fictitious case, and then I want you to take a case and practice in your family. And just wait a day or two. Something will happen, right? And you can take that case or just look at a chronic, which is a little more challenging to treat. But let's say that, okay, this is a good one. So, let's say that a child came over and they were playing with my chickens on the trampoline, which they're not supposed to do. And let's say this child fell off the trampoline and also dropped the chicken. Okay, of course that would never happen, right? And the chicken is limping around and the child is bruised and crying and upset. So what would you do in that case? So if you want to stop, I want you to write down some options, and then I'm going to give you what I would do. For example, I would, go console the child. Obviously, they're more important than the chicken. Person is always more important than an animal, right? But I would say, okay, where are you hurting? If they're scraped up, if they're hurting, we might get some arnica and maybe even aconite because they probably have had a shock of hitting themselves. And then I would look, okay, are you hurt? Is there anything broken? Look for bruising, which arnica would help. If they're scraped up, we would maybe even put some calendula balm on there, or even diluted. And for the chicken who's now limping around, which this has happened several times, at least them limping around, is I would give the lame animal protocol, which is symphytum for the bone. And usually I would do cell salts 1, 2, 3, and 12 for any of those kinds of issues. So that way we would give the chicken a chance to heal. If I need to, I would, of course, separate the chicken, put it in its own little cage for a little while, and 1, so it's not being beat up by the other ones, but 2, to allow it a chance to heal, make sure that it has food and water, and I would treat the chicken as well. And then I would check, how's everybody doing? How's the child doing to hurt themselves? Are they starting to, oh my goodness, Mom, now my head hurts. Do I need to get them a headache or a head remedy because maybe they hit their head and they didn't originally tell me that? So you're going to follow it as needed. Let's say that they got some abrasions and they have a little bit of burn on their arm. Maybe I would add in some urtica urns or cantharis, which are great burn remedies as far as homeopathy to give to them. So you can change it as needed and just give it, you can give it right away. And then a lot of times with kids or even with adults, I wait for them to come back to me, or I observe them quietly. Are they doing better? Do I need to ask them if they need some more? If I hear that, they're still, blowing their nose or whatever it might be, I might just see how are they doing, and if they're like, Mom, I'm still hurting, then I'm going to probably dose them again. Or I may ask them like, okay, we're getting ready to go. Do you think that you can handle this? Do you need some more of whatever it might be, some nat mirror for their nose or whatever? So anyway, I hope that this helps you along your journey, and I will tell you that this information is going to equip you so you don't have as much fear, and so that you are confident in treating your loved ones and your animals. Thank you.